I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're here to pick up Amtrak's Train 20, Northbound Crescent. It left New Orleans this morning, and we're going to take it to Washington, D.C. Interface, we sell synergy. It's pretty nice. Amtrak's Crescent was born out of two former Southern Railways trains. The Southern Crescent, from which it gets its name, and the Southerner, that it gets its root from. The Southern Crescent was a train so woven into the culture of the South that Southern Railways was able to keep operating it even after Amtrak started in the early 70s. It wasn't until 1979 that they turned over operation to Amtrak. 4 weeks ago, we were in Cincinnati, and we picked up the Cardinal. It only runs 6 times a week through that fairly big American metro. Atlanta gets 14 trains a week, and with that increased frequency comes a lot of increased ridership. The Crescent in Atlanta sees 4 to 5 times the ridership per train on average versus the Cardinal in Cincinnati. For all those riders in a big city of over 500,000 people like Atlanta, you'd assume that I've gone downtown to pick up the train. Well, no, we're actually about 4 miles north of downtown. We got off at Arts Center Station, taking the yellow line on MARTA, and we're headed up to Peachtree Station. It's a Southern Railways station that opened in 1918 to serve the suburbs back before sprawl was a thing. And I'm walking through the neighborhoods here, despite there being a bus route that goes from Arts Center Station to Peachtree Station. So I get an idea of the neighborhood, and I'll tell you, it's extremely gentrified, with lights of all colors, mostly traffic lights. The Crescent has quite a bit of padding on its timetable coming into Atlanta, so I'm hopeful it'll be able to make up the just under an hour late it currently is coming out of Anniston, Alabama. We're going to be in a Viewliner Roomette tonight, and I have it on good authority, meaning rail cams, that we're going to be in a Viewliner I, meaning that we're going to get the toilet in the Roomette, just like the Roomettes of old. But first we got to get up to this little station. We're going to see how that station's doing, holding over 100 inner city commuters when it was built to house handfuls of daily. The photos I've seen make it look really good, just plenty small, especially for such a big city down here in the South. I tell you, the city of Atlanta is zoned like they were making an omelet on a grill. They just lay down everything and then they just cover it. There's every kind of place you could imagine being in a normal metro area, just up and down hills in between forests, and it's quite the city. Atlanta used to have 2 downtown stations, Atlanta Terminal Station and Atlanta Union Station, and the Crescent served the Terminal Station. Those were shut down in 1971 and 72. And there's no trace of them left anymore, just the memories and photographs. Peachtree Station is on its own historic, but like I said, just small. There was an idea to build a new station further up at Doraville near the end of the MARTA yellow line, but that fell through. They even renovated this Peachtree Station for the '96 Olympic Games here in Atlanta. Yet it still remains the only place to catch a train in Atlanta, and the people down here still have some reverence for trains as a form of transit between cities. It's not something that's a novelty like up north, and the Crescent is definitely their train, and tonight we get to be a guest on it. We came in on Frontier Airlines today, and you'll see that in the future video as well. That's why I have such a small backpack as well, but believe it or not, I fit 2 days worth of clothes into it. And we'll be unloading those once we get into the roomette and making good use of that sink in there and the outlet and the toilet. The roomette fare for this train was in the mid $400 range. I don't remember exactly. It's not the most popular train in Amtrak's catalog because it doesn't have traditional dining. It's got flex dining, but it's served in a actual dining car with preparation facilities. And I've had flex meals from such a dining car, and they were actually very good, the best I'd ever had among all the routes. So we'll have to see how it fares tomorrow for breakfast and lunch, which, depending on how late we possibly get, might also turn into dinner, but I doubt it. In either case, dinner is the same as lunch on Flex, but I've heard that the last run of this southbound, some folks on a message board said the dining car allowed sleeper car passengers the capability to get cafe car items instead of Flex. What'll happen? I don't know. I'm up for anything. It's like a Metro or a Blue Line station in Chicago, but it's the main intercity train station in Atlanta. It certainly looks small. It fits in the frame. It's a little smaller than I expected, but about the same as described. Oh, that's a shame. Southern Railway built the Peachtree station to about the size of a couple 2-car garages. There's mostly enough seating, though some awaited their train street side. The restrooms were very clean, the water tasty, and the historic benches richly woody. There seems to be a newer section where Amtrak ticketing is located, as well as seating marked being for first-class passengers, though it seemed to also house passengers needing the elevator to descend to the track level below the station. There are some AC outlets for charging, but few of them. The rooms do fill up with passengers and the sound of hollering children, anxious as I was to find myself aboard this midnight train from Georgia on the last night of May. The Crescent rolls in northbound on schedule, or better than that most of the time, around 11 p.m., departing prior to midnight. Southbound trains call on the station in the morning, about the same as my main station of St. Paul. The mood of the building is of tired people waiting to go places, but an occasional Norfolk Southern freight train breaks the monotony now and then. I don't think I'm the only sleeper car passenger, but at that moment I was. Second car from the back. Very historic. By that I mean unchanged. Okay. Not ready yet. I guess we'll hang out here.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first boarding announcement for train number 20 to Northbound Crescent. Norway train.
Sleeping car attendant wants us to wait to come on until she's all prepared. A couple other passengers are much more impatient or confused. They don't also speak very much English. And then the other sleeping car attendant's just wondering what's going on with this one. This is Amtrak working in phases.
Hi, ready, my love, you ready?
Yes, I am. Viewliner I. Viewliner I sleeper cars are either your favorite single-level American sleeper or your most hated, mostly for the ensuite toilet adorning the roughly 6 foot by 3 foot space. This seems unsanitary because it mostly is, though mine took some inspection to see the grime upon initially entering the room, and it smelled alright. There's luggage storage over the hallway. You can stand on the closed toilet to access the upper level bunk, which has its own windows, air controls, etc. But I chose to elevate the bunk for spaciousness of the lower bunk. There's also plenty of light this way. These 1990s built cars have plenty of lighting configurations at night as well, as dated panels that show off the rare late 20th century branding of Amtrak, with no other cars in the fleet really showing these anymore. There's an ensuite sink that drains to plumbing behind the bulkhead. Don't believe its lies about ice water. Lucky for me, my favorite hand soap is present in a bottle all my own. The sink down light was burnt out, so it was good I wouldn't have a traveling partner. I've taken the Silver Meteor in this Viewliner room with my oldest daughter, and it was fine, but she refused to use the toilet, and I was and remain completely enthusiastic about it. Some folks with mobility issues find it helpful, though not as spacious as the accessible or full bedrooms in this Viewliner sleeper. The flex dining isn't really first-class fare, just reheated meals recreating the dining car experience with a variable level of success. We'll see how breakfast and lunch go tomorrow. The month just about to switch over to June as we near a midnight departure, late from Atlanta, this train on its way to New York City, and myself to Washington, D.C. Alright, we're in here forever now. What is with these Viewliner locks? Excuse you. Well, that was absolutely unique. It's a lot like what I remember picking up the Empire Builder, going to Portland. My honeymoon was like, you're just so tired waiting for the train and so focused on waiting to see it. There was a whole bunch of kids gathered under an underpass over there. Atlanta. Some good times in Atlanta. I'm gonna have to come back. I still have a streetcar ticket I didn't use, so you gotta leave something for yourself down the road. Pretty soon we got a couple more stops in Georgia, and then we are South Carolina overnight, waking up in North Carolina, unless we get later, which happened on the Silver Star when I took it northbound. We have a toilet in the room, we have the Amtrak soap, so everything is fine. Waking up in North Carolina finds oneself in a Piedmont postcard. The Crescent's route from Charlotte northeast sees the train gradually working its way through pastures, across rivers, behind industrial buildings, all with hillsides gradually increasing their scope until the Appalachian foothills envelop the Norfolk Southern trackage, headed toward D.C. At High Point, I stepped off the train to get a brief bit of fresh air, but was hustled back aboard by the second sleeping car attendant, despite our arrival 10 minutes early. Amtrak crews tend to treat all passengers as confused or without pairings. I'm not the type to head all the way into the station, just to get my paces around a platform, to say I've been somewhere. This is typically met with consternation from crews who have seen too many aimless wanderers left behind after the all-aboard call. My consternation on this morning was that our sleeper shower was being used for luggage storage, and thus I would have to head back to the bag dorm with its shower room, and the likelihood of its 3 to 4-year-old floor already being grimy from shower water left undrained, as has been the case on my previous trips. This was the case today, among the typical CAF cabinet doors failing their latches so early in life. You can dissuade many riders from the appeal of Viewliner I sleeper roomettes by mentioning the human waste in the room factor, but the combination of low shower pressure, mildew, and fit and finish issues among the CAF-built Viewliner IIs just makes them inferior in my book. Let's give it a go.
Last call for Greensboro, last call.
Good morning from Greensboro, North Carolina, home of Jeb Brooks, of course. That was a okay night of sleep. I was just so kind of anxious to see what was going on outside. I slept fine when I slept, but like amount-wise, not much more than I usually sleep at home. Probably just because this is what I look forward to. Anyway, we're going to go down to the dining car.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, welcome aboard Train 20, the Crescent. Just a few announcements. Please pamphlets in the seat pocket in front of you. Please go over there just in case of emergency. If you're walking the train, please make sure you have your shoes on at all times. If you have children 15 and under, make sure they're with you at all times.
Intermittent coach messages are the best. We're going to head down to the dining car next and have some breakfast. I think I'm in the mood for crepes. Definitely in the mood for coffee. Really looking forward to Washington, D.C. and the D.C. Metro later. But first... we gotta find that part. Much better. First we gotta shave. Well, that wasn't too piddly. The old sink is a little worse for wear now. The high pressure water is, of course, the biggest gamut on Amtrak. It's gonna mess up the room if you let it go on a while, and that's where I'm gonna be putting my feet up, so we'll just leave that to the cleaning crew, I'm sorry to say. But let's go get some breakfast now that we're all freshened up. Compared to a decade ago, the flex fare such as these apple crepes is a cheap means of recouping more fare box recovery from first-class passengers. It certainly doesn't taste first class, yet people keep buying first-class tickets when this is all that's offered. The fancy description sounds out of the Acela menu, but this would never pass through any decently branded train's dining car kitchen. The crepe was soggy, the bourbon cream sauce setting thicker than the crepe itself. The coffee was average, present, but the views from the dining car mitigated the whole experience. It would seem I had a better choice in the omelet and potatoes last time on the Cardinal. Mostly it's tree rows and embankments, but there's a lot of lucky glimpses of the emerging southern landscape in between the vast expanses of leaves and bark. Your mind can wander through the streets, alleys, and backyard scenes when traversing the lucky handful of hill-set towns in this rural East Coast setting. I personally wonder about just how many countless leaves there are in the world on this mid-spring day. My sleeper car attendant told me the prior evening that she'd make up my room to its day seating configuration while I was at breakfast, but upon returning to my room, I found it as disheveled as it was before. I pushed the attendant call button, a rarity for me, twice, but she never responded. Unperturbed, I went back to the dining car to give her a while to catch up, but fairly certain I'd be undertaking the enjoyable to me task of resetting the bed into seats upon my return some 20 minutes further down the track. A time that would come after we left Danville, our first stop in Virginia.
Ladies and gentlemen, the stop coming up will be Danville. It's a your stop. You can gather all your belongings and head to the door. You see a crew member at the door, please.
Virginia is a very near and dear to my heart state. The times I've had traveling this richly historic state by all forms of transportation have been relaxingly enjoyable. That is to say, if I-95 is required, you would only find me aboard a train. I don't need to draw a line on a map as to what commuting stresses I can live without. The Eisenhower Interstate Plan did that for me decades ago. The Northeast Corridor has its southern terminus just off to our west as we trace around through and over valleys toward Lynchburg. After Roanoke, Lynchburg is the second major city on the corridor to receive regular daily connections to the East Coast megalopolis by Amtrak trains. A fact that provides a path for many folks to experience all the city has to offer. These small cities represent their own compartments of government in Virginia, separate from the rural counties, and they hang on to their tourism dollars reaped from folks coming out south down the corridor year-round. Our train plays a role in their proliferation as well. The Crescent's route from New Orleans through Mississippi, Alabama, and thereon continues the tradition of Southerners traveling up and down the East Coast for all sorts of reasons. There's no shortage of Southern accents among passengers aboard our train, but there's plenty of Northeast accents as well, and the variety of low-cost flights such as the one I utilized the day prior mean that experiencing the Southern U.S. and connecting back via the Northeast Corridor and its wealth of competing airports have Amtrak as a great, albeit somewhat subtly marketed tourism vehicle with this Crescent and other Southern routes. Charlottesville is where our Norfolk Southern line converges with the Buckingham Branch Railway, the route of our previously taken Cardinal train. That lower speed railroad affords an even cheaper sleeper fare when going out west to Chicago, though at the expense of having no dining car in which first-class passengers are intended to have as an alternative to eating or sitting in their rooms throughout the journey. But it does have the new river gorge and steeper hillsides ascending into West Virginia. The two routes have the possibility of connections made same day, of the days that the Cardinal's running, via an afternoon spent in Charlottesville, a city with some impressive elevation differences between a handful of city blocks. Northward, we take on hills and shed some of Dixie's influence as the scenery gradually takes on more of the isms that will culminate upon our crossing of the Potomac in a couple of hours. We begin to see more preserved railroad infrastructure, albeit still historically sparse in frequency. But such is a good way for these towns to gather more tourists for longer stays. There too becomes an increasing presence of public transit as we traipse up the line. Countywide connections can be made out here via bus, but we won't see much on this Sunday ride. The day of rest is in full effect, though most of the town centers where we make our few remaining stops seem busy with pedestrians onlooking the arrival and departure of the Crescent daily. We're also into the time of our lunch reservation in the dining car. I chose the salmon because I last had it from the flex dining menu aboard the Silver Meteor in this same model dining car with great results from a proper plating of the dish, carefully reheated with its sauce lifted from the plate and separately slow heated. Today's salmon is certainly just reheated and held in its container as is. That makes the fish less flaky, the vegetables more lackluster in appearance, though average in flavor. The sauce is good, but it can't save the dish from tasting like leftovers at home. Good, but hardly what anyone expects from several $100s worth of accommodations spent on a train. Pseudo slop aside, lunch was great with a butter cake. I can qualify the Delaware-made cakes a controlled substance thanks to their lack of availability outside of the federally purse-string clutches of Amtrak. It might be worth the price of the sleeper alone. Okay, not everyone's as easy to please as I am. I don't think there's a single great flex dining offering, just various shades of compromised choices under the auspices of fate when it comes to how one's dining car or cafe car attendant will devote themselves to its cooking and table service. But with hardly an hour to go, the remainder of our trip into the DMV region begins to close as the buildings take on facades of the more unified modern gentry. It's looking more suburban with every mile.
Once again, this is Manassas. If you're getting off the Manassas, come to see a uniform personnel.
In videos to come, we'll wander back the line now behind us and come on up from the limits of Piedmont through the interior of Virginia, as we did in our abbreviated version of the trip today, via a long-form ride, as well as a walk around DC and experience more civil service buildings set as idle facades on my time-wasting walk around that would be facilitated by the DC Metro Rail system later today. And we'll also ride the soon-to-be-closed DC streetcar, because why not? I gotta punch my card for that transit kid credit. It's a good ride on the Crescent. Food could have been a lot better, but that butter cake makes up for a lot of flex dining woes. Just a handful of moments before we get into DC, and I think we'll stop by the lounge so we can take advantage of that.
bicycles out of the baggage car. So you show our
After a 6-ish hour dayside travel on Amtrak's Crescent today, I feel adequately rested, mostly myself, and anxious for the East Coast culinary fare that you know I'll always waste my options to have. That will be seen in an upcoming video, but for today I'm glad you could join me on this ride up the East Coast. It wasn't bad. I felt ready to walk around DC after what seemed like a well-paced morning in my roomette. I'd take this ride again, maybe even in coach if I had to, maybe all the way down to New Orleans. Comment below if you've taken the Crescent or other East Coast trains recently, or had any trip. I'll be back next week with some other part of some other trip that I've taken. For now, just caffeinated chocolates to go with my liquid bean energy drink that should deliver me to my hostel via the DC Metro in a future video. Thanks for watching. I hope you're having fun wandering out there, and I'll see you in the next one.